Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to discuss the price of Bitcoin, which sits at $105,000 after the weekend's chaos. We're going to discuss a few big stories that are breaking this week, could have a massive impact on the markets. And we're going to briefly touch on AI, which I believe is going to have a massive role in the future of crypto. Now, we've seen loads of bearish posts over the last few days and it's becoming laughable. People claiming that Bitcoin is going to 50k, 60k, with 74k. We've seen them all. But for me, Bitcoin is looking very strong. And the weekend's action was just a blip in price. Now, as we all know, the Iran-Israel conflict seemed to peak on Saturday night with the US getting involved and seems to be dying down in the last few days. We saw last night Qatar airbase got bombed, but I do believe we are coming to the end of it. And this wick down will be a bit of a shakeout. If you look at on the price chart, we've drawn this blue box a while ago. You can see that the wick from Saturday closed this fair value gap. So fair value gap is between this wick here and this wick here. We can now see we've pretty much closed that entire gap, and at the same time we bounced off a key level from before. This resistance line from back in February is now acted as support. And Bitcoin bounced amazingly last night when we found out that basically the conflict was coming to an end. It seems like Iran's bomb of Qatar was a retaliation. It was to save face. It was to actually show some strength. But in reality, it was a planned, choreographed attempt to save face to the world. And I believe it will bring the conflict to a close in the coming days. Now, that's not to say that we will only be up from here. I do think we'll get some chop around here. We may even visit back down to this level here, around 103k in the coming days, before we move much higher. But there is bigger stories brewing. Now, if you follow people on Twitter like Mr. Wall Street, you'll see that he's saying that the markets are bleeding and they're going to continue to bleed. Well, I disagree. I think the second half of this year is going to be the most epic rallies we have seen. And there's a few reasons for it. One, Bitcoin is at 105k, so that tells me that we are showing some amazing strength in the market. Bitcoin tracks global liquidity, and when it's strong, it normally tells us we are going into a bull phase. If we look at the S&P 500, we are down less than 2% from all-time high. The S&P 500 probably makes a new all-time high in the next 90 days. The Nasdaq, well, it's down less than 1%. We probably see a new all-time high for the Nasdaq in the coming days. Circle IPO'd just a few weeks ago and we are up massively. I think it's up over 700% and it looks like it's going to continue to show strength. The Russell 2000 is on the verge of breaking out. I think if we break above this 200-day moving average here, then we will see the Russell 2000 fly, and that is very bullish for crypto. And then you've got Microsoft making new all-time highs day after day at the moment. Looks like it's going to make a new all-time high when the market opens today. So markets are not bleeding. Markets actually look very strong, given that we were on the brink of World War III last week, if you believe the headlines. And the US just bombed a Middle Eastern country. So you should expect the markets were much, much lower. And that tells me that this conflict isn't going to be a long-lived thing. It's going to be over very quickly and the world is going to move on. Now, another signal of this is gold. Gold is now down over 3% since the high just a few days ago. So this again tells me that this war isn't going to be a long-lasting affair. Gold always moves higher when there's conflict, especially in the Middle East, but geopolitical conflict leads gold much higher because central banks allocate to gold. They start moving money into gold because they know that's a safe haven asset. The fact that we've now started to see gold sell off tells me the war is over. And then the last signal is oil. Oil, of course, massively impacted by Iran, who controls 20% of the world's oil. When the conflict began, we saw oil shoot up, and people were predicting $120 a barrel oil. At the time, we said in CC Pro we didn't think this was going to be long lasting. We thought it would be over very quickly, and this was just going to be a short-term conflict. And we've saw oil retreat down now over 12% from the local high. And I do think it will then go into a range and trade between this kind of high around $78 and down around $60. So for me, we are looking like a very bullish second half of 2025. Bitcoin currently consolidating above 105k. I do think we might get some chop over the next few days, but then we will lead much higher. And that's before we get QE, rate cuts, and everything else that's coming in this market. Now, we know from the last FOMC, the Fed decided to pause. They held rates steady once again, still convinced that inflation is going to be a problem. I've been saying for a while, inflation is no longer an issue. Inflation excluding shelter is less than 1.5%, and the Fed is way behind the curve. The Fed should cut rates and follow central banks in Europe, Switzerland, and across the world in cutting rates. If we look at July, it looks like we're not going to get another cut in July. 77% that they hold rates steady, and it's going to be the September meeting where we finally get that cut. The odds continue to rise, 63% chance that we get a rate cut in September. I think that will rise even more over the coming weeks. I also think that gives the Fed a bit of breathing space because there's no meeting in August, so it allows them to get more and more data that confirm a rate cut is right. But the big story for me is the SLR, the supplementary leverage ratio, which the Fed will be debating on this week, and that could be the key to sparking the next leg of the bull run. So we come back to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who gets featured on my streams and videos a lot. And the reason for that is he's telling you why you should be bullish. He's telling you what the government's actually going to do. And he's signalling to markets that there's going to be massive flows of liquidity later this year. So just a couple of weeks ago, Scott Bessent said that he had an idea to get the yield down on the 10-year Treasury. The reason he was so bullish on getting the yield down is because he's going to change the leverage ratio for banks, which should allow them to hold more US government debt without having to increase the amount of capital they hold on hand. So right now, the SLR basically means if a bank goes and buys assets or debt, they have to hold a certain percentage of cash on hand in case there's big drawdowns or big losses. Well, the idea Scott Bessent has is removing or reducing that leverage ratio for government debt only. That means banks will be able to go and buy billions of dollars of government debt without having to hold the cash equivalent on hand. And the banking sector seems to welcome it. They will be able to go and buy US government debt, which yields decent returns right now, and they'll be able to not have to hold extra cash on hand. The big banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, they're the ones that will benefit the most from it. But why is this bullish for Bitcoin? Well, the big reason this is so bullish for Bitcoin is it's going to add huge amounts of liquidity into the market. The reason this is so bullish for Bitcoin is it's going to drive the 10-year and the 30-year yield down. It's going to allow banks to buy more of that government debt, which naturally brings down the yield. Scott Bessent anticipates that the move will lower the interest rates by up to 70 basis points, so 0.7%. On top of that, it could bring in $500 billion worth of liquidity into the market. And the easy way to think about it is this. With more banks buying treasuries, the yield on the treasury will drop. Buyer demand goes up, the yield drops. But what actually happens to the value of the bond? It increases at the same time. So while the banks will bring in that extra $500 billion of buy pressure, I expect as soon as the Fed announce this is their plan, we will see the yields drop as other market participants like hedge funds, other banks that aren't some of the big banks, some corporations, they'll actually start buying the long-term debt because they know the value of the debt is going to increase. The value of the underlying bond is going to increase once these big banks get unleashed later in the year. The plan can take a few months to actually come into practice, but markets are forward-looking. Other market participants are going to buy in anticipation for the likes of JP Morgan, Citibank to come in and buy later in the year when they have the laws changed about the SLR. So for me, this is going to unveil a massive liquidity tap for markets. 500 billion just from the SLR changing, but what about the added buy pressure that comes from other people that are speculating on this demand? It's going to unleash loads of liquidity into the market, and I think it's going to be very bullish for risk assets, in particular Bitcoin and crypto. Okay, so now let's turn to the Circle IPO, because I think this is a big story brewing, and it's the fact that Wall Street are so keen on crypto. Wall Street want a massive allocation of crypto. They're just waiting on regulation changing so that they can start adopting more and more. And I think, again, this is going to propel us in the second half of this year. Now, if we look at the Circle IPO, we can obviously see it's a straight line up. The pre-IPO valuation was actually down here around $35 a share. As you can see at pre-market today, we are trading up over 600%. At the peak, we were up over 740%. And as you can see, the Circle IPO was the biggest two-day gain of any major US IPO in the last 45 years. That's a huge sign from Wall Street about their interest, not in just crypto, but stablecoins as a whole. And with stablecoin volume expected to 5x in the next 12 months, stablecoins are going to be huge. Now, at the same time, we are seeing Bitcoin company after Bitcoin company spark up. We saw Anthony Pompliano announce yesterday that he's raised over $1 billion to go and buy Bitcoin. You've got Jack Mallers 21, you've got Metaplanet, and of course you've got MicroStrategy. They continue to buy Bitcoin along with the ETFs. And for me, Bitcoin is going to 200k easy in the next 12 months. And that's before we see the massive ETF approval process for other crypto companies. So if we look at this, we can see the odds of approval have jumped in the last few months, with a baskets index, Litecoin and Solana all sitting at 90%, XRP 85%, Dogecoin 80%, Cardano and Polkadot at 75%. I believe we're going to see a massive wave of ETF approvals later this year. It's going to coincide with some more regulation from the US government, and it's going to spark a massive crypto wave, because Wall Street is showing that they want involved in this game. And when Wall Street wants in on something, regulators pretty much guarantee they'll get access. For me, I think over the last few years, the S&P and the Nasdaq have been absolutely dominated by the Mag 7, the big 7 tech stocks. But with most of them getting to the top of their range, Wall Street's now looking for other ways to make money. They know the multiple on a Netflix, a Tesla, Nvidia, Microsoft, whatever company it is, the upside momentum isn't as big as crypto. Crypto hasn't ran properly yet, and I think Wall Street are going to start moving towards crypto from the Mag 7, and we'll see a massive rotation of capital in the billions, if not trillions, into crypto in the next 12 months. I also think we're going to see a massive move in the markets, and that's dominated by AI. I've said for ages I'm super bullish on AI, and one of the reasons for that is because crypto and AI go hand in hand. An AI agent isn't going to transact in fiat or gold or anything else. They're going to use stablecoins, they're going to use crypto, and that's why I think the AI boom that we're about to experience is going to coincide with a massive crypto boom. It's no coincidence that Microsoft, since announcing it, was making layoffs because it doesn't need as many people because of AI. Its stock is absolutely popped and it's went on to all-time highs. And I think that's going to be a trend over the next few years, that we're going to see big companies disrupted by AI in a big, big way. Some of them that can adapt and transition, like Tesla, Microsoft, they will do very well because they've already got AI at the heart of what they do. I think Uber is another one to watch out for. They're making a massive push in driverless taxis. I think they'll all do very well, but some of the other big companies like Google and Apple might struggle as they don't adapt to AI as quick or as easily as some of the other companies. And this was backed up this week. Coates released their new report on AI, tech and the markets. And if you look at their top 40 companies, there's no Apple, there's no Google. Because who's using Google to search for things and then go on links and click through websites and try and find the information you're looking for when you just go to ChatGPT or Perplexity, ask it to analyze a report, ask it to find you the information you need and in digestible chunks so you can easily understand it. No one's going to use Google to search for things when they've got AI at their fingertips. And as AI becomes more intuitive, it becomes more easy to access via voice control and your devices in your house, you're not going to use a company like Google. And that's what their report is showing. They also have Microsoft as the most valuable company in the world, Bitcoin number 3, Interestingly, Ethereum is in the list at number 15, and you can see some other big names. OpenAI just number 9, but Tesla ahead at number 7. The one trend you can clearly see is that these companies are either service or infrastructure plays. You look at SpaceX, infrastructure, Netflix, service. These are the big themes going into an AI world because people are going to have a lot more free time. They're going to focus more on services, but a big theme of this report is crypto. You've got Bitcoin, you've got Ethereum, but you've also got Binance, Revolut, you've got Shopify, who just announced they're going to be looking at a stablecoin, and you've got Stripe, who will make that possible. So I think crypto is going to be tied into this AI move in the coming years. Overall, despite this weekend's conflict in the Middle East, Bitcoin looks very bullish. The crypto market, in my opinion, is about to fly. You look across the market, Ethereum has bounced up and reclaimed some key levels. XRP is back above this green band, showing amazing strength. And Total 2, despite bouncing back to $1 trillion, is back up above 1.1 trillion. I think the next move for crypto is going to be huge. I think we have a few days of chop, a few days of sideways before we explode much higher. And for everyone saying Bitcoin dominance is going to 70%, I just don't buy it. Yeah, we put in a new cycle high caused by the conflict, but I think this was more a fake out rather than an actual real move. I think with Total 2 bouncing so hard off this level, dominance can't go much higher if Total 2 is bouncing. So to wrap up, I think we have a hugely bullish second half of the year. I think we get rate cuts. I think we get the SLR change this week, which will bring in $500 billion of capital into the market, plus extra buying from institutions. We've got crypto set up for a huge end of the summer with ETF approval, the Genius Act, stable coins, and a massive move from Wall Street from traditional stocks into crypto and especially Bitcoin companies. But I think that'll be followed through with crypto companies very soon. The AI play is here to stay. AI is going to transform the way we do business. If it's not already transformed how you interact with your business today, then you probably need to look at strategies to incorporate AI because it is not a bubble. It is going much bigger. But the best thing for all of us, AI relies on crypto. It's going to need crypto to transact. All these stablecoin payments, they're all going to take place on Solana or Ethereum, on Rails, and that generates fees, which generates price appreciation. And that's why crypto is going to be very bullish in the next 6 to 12 months. I think we're on course for the biggest bull run ever. I think QE is coming, and I think everyone just needs to hold on tight and not get shaken out by stupid news stories. That's all for today. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'll be back in the next few days with even more videos and a live stream. Catch you all soon.